Houston in the 1970s promised overnight fortunes, a city where incomes jumped 140%, oil prices quadrupled, and homes that cost $28,000 doubled in value before the decade was out. But for every millionaire made, there was a family drowning in smog, in heat, or in hurricane floodwaters. Why did people stay through the chaos, and what did it really cost to chase the American dream in the most extreme city of its era? The answer starts with the tidal wave of oil money that changed everything. It felt like every week a new company was setting up shop in Houston. The Arab oil embargo in 1973 sent crude prices soaring, and the city turned into a magnet for Fortune 500 companies, Shell, Exxon, and more, all racing to claim their slice. Office towers shot up along Allen Parkway and downtown, their glass facades catching the Texas sun. Paychecks followed suit. Oil and petrochemical workers who had started the decade making $8,000 a year saw their wages double, sometimes almost overnight. A refinery foreman could walk out of a Friday shift with a pay stub that looked like a lottery ticket. $300, $400, even $500 a week before overtime. It wasn't just the big bosses cashing in. Pipe fitters, welders, secretaries, anyone willing to clock in at the plants or in the new high-rises found themselves flush. One worker remembered, "You could quit at lunch and have a new job by dinner, with a raise." Car dealerships on South Main couldn't keep Cadillacs on the lot. Appliance stores sold out of window AC units before noon. Restaurants and bars stayed busy with workers celebrating another fat bonus. This was a time when the city's pulse beat to the rhythm of oil money, and for a while it seemed like Houston might never come down from the paydays. Houston's housing market in the 1970s turned into a gold rush. Home prices shot up from $28,000 at the start of the decade to $65,000 by 1979. For anyone with a little nerve and a decent credit score, the city felt like a slot machine that just kept paying out. Deed transfers piled up at the county courthouse, with some properties changing hands 3 or 4 times in a single year. Flipping houses wasn't just a side hustle, it was a full-time career for thousands. One speculator remembered, "You'd buy a place in Sharpstown for $35,000, fix up the kitchen, and sell it for $50,000 before the paint dried. Then you'd do it again across the street." The no-state income tax promise drew transplants from Chicago, Detroit, and Los Angeles, all looking for a piece of the action. Ranch-style homes with central air popped up in new subdivisions like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Developers couldn't build fast enough. Ads promised backyard pools, avocado green appliances, and the comfort of never having to sweat through a Houston summer again. Even the banks got caught up in the frenzy, offering mortgages with a handshake and a smile. The money from oil and real estate started to blur together, fueling a wave of suburban growth that would soon stretch far beyond the city limits. In Houston, land was cheap, credit was easy, and the future seemed as endless as the Gulf horizon. Step outside on a July afternoon in Houston in the 1970s, and the heat hits like a wall. The air feels heavy enough to swim through, thick, sticky, and relentless. Even when the thermometer stopped shy of 100, the humidity made it feel hotter. By late morning, sweat would bead on your forehead just walking to the mailbox. Neighborhoods buzzed with the sound of air conditioning units straining against the heat, their metal shells humming day and night. Houston Lighting and Power sent out bills that made people wince, $200, sometimes $300 a month, just to keep the living room bearable. The old window units rattled and wheezed, and central air, if you had it, ran non-stop from May through September. For air conditioning repairmen, summer meant 14-hour days. One remembered how they would start at sunrise and finish after sunset, crawling through attics so hot your tools would burn your hands. People would plead for same-day service because their kids could not sleep. The phones at repair shops rang off the hook. If your unit died, you joined a waiting list and prayed for a breeze. This was a time when the promise of comfort shaped where families settled. Subdivisions advertised central air as a selling point, and backyard pools became more than a luxury, they were survival. The city's growth stretched outward, chasing relief from the heat, as Houstonians learned to build their lives around the hum of the air conditioning and the ever-present threat of another sweltering summer. Chaos was practically a city ordinance in Houston in the 1970s. With no zoning laws to speak of, the city grew out and up in every direction at once. Strip malls sprouted next to churches, refineries loomed behind subdivisions, and Loop 610, supposed to keep traffic flowing, became a daily parking lot by 5 o'clock. The Galleria opened in 1970, a marble and glass shrine to shopping and air conditioning, drawing crowds from every suburb. But drive a few miles east, and the brown haze over the ship channel told a different story. The air there carried the sharp tang of petrochemicals, mixing with barbecue smoke and the whine of 18-wheelers. EPA advisories warned families to stay inside on bad days, but most people just rolled up their windows and hoped for rain to clear the air. Still, Houston's wild sprawl came with a sense of possibility. Johnson Space Center anchored a whole new suburb in Clear Lake, where astronauts and engineers lived side by side with refinery workers. Kids grew up hearing about moon landings at school and spotting astronauts at the grocery store. One NASA engineer recalled that you never forgot you were part of something bigger. Everybody in Houston felt like they had a hand in the space program. Even as the city's growth outpaced any kind of planning, there was a feeling that anything was possible if you could handle the mess. The same city that let factories and homes collide was also the place where the first word spoken from the moon was Houston. Ambition and disorder went hand in hand, and nobody seemed in a hurry to change that. In neighborhoods like Fifth Ward and Third Ward, the boom felt distant. Police radios crackled with reports of robberies and break-ins. In 1973, a Houston Chronicle headline screamed about the Dean Coral murders, sending a chill through every parent in the city. The murder rate climbed each year, and the Houston Police Department struggled to keep up with the city's exploding population. Patrol cars sometimes took hours to answer calls in these areas, and streetlights that flickered out could stay dark for weeks. Abandoned houses dotted the blocks, their windows boarded up, while families did their best to keep lawns tidy and kids out of trouble. Residents talked about feeling forgotten, left to handle rising crime and shrinking city services on their own. For many, the promise of Houston's riches never reached their doorstep, just the noise, the fear, and the knowledge that help wasn't coming fast enough. Rain hammered rooftops for hours, then days, as Tropical Storm Claudette stalled over Houston in July 1979. In Alvin, just south of the city, a rain gauge recorded an impossible number, 43 inches in 24 hours, the most ever measured in the continental United States. Streets disappeared beneath brown water. Families like the Rodriguezes watched from second-story windows as their cars floated down the block. The phone lines were jammed with calls to insurance agents, but adjusters could not reach half the neighborhoods cut off by floodwater. Bayous spilled over, drainage ditches filled, and water backed up into homes that had never flooded before. City workers tried to clear storm drains, but the water just kept coming. Urban planners would later say the disaster was no accident. Houston's breakneck growth had paved over prairie, built subdivisions in floodplains, and left the city with a drainage system that could not keep up. Claudette did not just soak Houston, it exposed how vulnerable the city had become. Today, Houston still chases growth without pause. Now, with nearly 2.3 million people, bigger storms, and the same uneasy mix of ambition and risk. The city's wild 1970s blueprint echoes in every new tower and flooded street. Progress here never apologizes. It just asks if you are ready to adapt. Share your Houston story below.